the global economy is slowing more rapidly than expected, warns the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. The OECD is projecting that the global GDP will expand by 2.9%, but that is down from 3.3% last year. The Paris-based body is linking that slowing to Washington's wide-ranging tariff wars and is warning that further protectionism could slow the global economy even more. The U.S. economic growth forecast was slashed to 1.6% this year, down from 2.2%. The OECD pointed to Trump's sweeping tax cut and spending bill as one of the leading factors. Now, as for China's growth forecast, some change as well. Its GDP is poised to rise by 4.7% this year. This as Beijing's stimulus measures are expected to offset the impact from U.S. tariffs. Let's take a closer look at the latest OECD information and what it really means for the global outlook. And joining us to talk about all this is Iñaki Martinez Soria, an economic strategist and advisor. Iñaki, welcome to the program. Good to see you again.
John, nice to see you again, as always.
The OECD just cut its global growth forecast to 2.9%, as we just talked about. So what's driving this slowdown? Obviously, a variety of things. Tariff uncertainty seemingly plays a significant role. But what about policy missteps, perhaps deeper structural issues? Or is there a lot more to this?
Well, Sean, first of all, we need to look this at what they are. They are essentially projection forecasts, and they're based on a series of assumptions. These forecasts were made in general prior to the incoming Trump administration. There was generally a very positive outlook of what a second Trump presidency would look like. It was expected to be a very dynamic presidency in terms of the economies, slashing spending, sort of releasing the forces of the market and driving a new era of growth from the United States. But what we have seen, it has surpassed negatively any and all expectations. What we're seeing is, in terms of the economy, a very erratic presidency that seems to only fit the qualms and the whims of the president and his very rudimentary economic thought. A very erratic tariff policy that changes by the day as the president tweets up and down for each country, and even minute personal offenses or gestures can change the result of that policy. There's not much predictability. The American economic and foreign policy bureaucracy, which usually was thought to assure very stable outcomes, hasn't been able to control the president this time. They've come with a renewed agenda, and naturally all that uncertainty and all these economic warfare going on from the U.S. presidency and from the U.S. in general is affecting the projections, and
right.
it's driving the economic organizations to reassess their forecasts.
Yeah, and so this uncertainty that you're talking about is something that the U.S. has had to deal with from its Fed down to even state levels. But as you talked about, trade tensions are back in full force with the U.S. tariffs now at the highest levels since the 1930s. Okay, look back on that. And what does this shift mean for global supply chains, especially with China as a target? Seemingly, if things went back to the way they were in late 2024, we would still have this hangover.
Well, of course, the main affected parties are going to be the U.S. and China. For the U.S., the feel is going to be mainly for the U.S. consumer, who's going to see every single price or most of the prices rise as the cost of the majority of the products also increased due to the tariffs. For China, of course, which is a highly industrialized economy and a supplier, highly export-oriented economy and a supplier of industrial goods for the United States and general consumer goods, it's going to take a toll. For the rest of the countries, I think that the effects are going to be a little bit more varied. I believe that there's a significant amount of allies, of U.S. allies in Southeast Asia that are going to see some benefits, particularly of this sort of friend-shoring policy. India is going to be one of those main drivers of continued growth from this. When you think that several American companies are already shifting their supply lines towards India and some other Southeast Asian states as Malaysia, Indonesia, and others that we'll see, especially in the tech sector, we're going to see those changes. Then, of course, the rest of the countries, it's a very complex patchwork of results, and it's going to be heavily dependent on the personal relationship that they have with the United States and even among leaders.
Let's get away from China for just a second, talk about the EU, because the EU has been moving forward in very, one could argue, very thoughtful, thought-provoking strategy, lowering its interest rate, keeping things under control, now getting inflation about where it wants to be. And the OECD is talking about governments work together. What about the EU and the United States moving forward? Because these longtime allies could really have some significant lines drawn between them.
Yes, I think the EU is reassessing its posture to the United States, not only in economic terms, but also in security and defense terms. The entire EU defense strategy was reliant on almost absolute, not even possible to doubt, US support. Now that is changing. The European bureaucracy, it's now making some significant overtures, but it is slow to act. Particularly, there are some significant rifts within the EU on a variety of terms, from immigration to defense strategy to how to handle the economy. We're seeing new populist leaders rise on the fringes of Europe, but also on some key major countries as Germany and France. So the EU is confronted basically with a twofold problem. It has an internal problem that will lead essentially to their positions not being as unified, and then there's the external problem, which is that it's dealing with the US. So far, it appears that the tariffs will kick in at the expected date, and the negotiating teams are rushing to get a deal before that. But I think what it is positive in that sense is that the EU is getting a sort of an independent feel of what it means to reorganize their economy, and essentially to reinvigorate the economy and call for more dynamism from its constituent parties.
Okay, and China also launching some major fiscal monetary stimulus programs to keep its economy on track. Is it going to be enough to offset this weaker global demand and the simply, once again, elevated trade uncertainty with the United States?
Well, Sean, I think China, the Chinese government has a lot of sort of margin to influence its economy, but perhaps the more encouraging opportunities come from abroad, as many of the countries are also reassessing their own trade relationships with the US. China will have the significant opportunity, particularly through new trade blocs, as well, not new, but reinvigorated trade blocs as the BRICS, to grab a greater chunk of the global trade and to try to offset the loss of the U.S. market through other third parties and new allies and new associates. There are encouraging signs as everything, the geopolitical debate and the battle going on below this will condition certainly what China can or cannot do, but it is certain that China is increasingly being seen as the stable conservative power that the U.S. used to be for the global economy and for the global outlook.